everybody. I'm Amy Zewe with Camera's Partnership of Christians and Jews. Camera stands for the Committee for Accuracy in Middle East Reporting. And today, joining us from Finland is Risto Huvila, a man of many talents and endeavors. He's a political advisor, a TV host, an author, a musician, but most importantly, he's a man of faith. He's a Christian who cherishes the entire Bible and looks at history and has a unique expertise on history through the lens that I think God has given to him, a lens that is his own, God's own. So I want to invite Risto to speak with us today because his outreach and support for Israel and the Jewish people goes beyond his homeland of Finland and has been reaching into the world. He's been a guest at the Israeli president's residence to perform his original music. He has a wonderful book release that we will share with you. And we just really want to hear his insights as a European and a global traveler on why the Christian community needs to support Israel and the atmosphere that is coming against that support globally. Risto, thank you for joining us. Please tell us a little bit about who you are and the endeavors and the agencies you work through to share your deep expertise and your support for Israel and the Jewish people.
Yes, thanks for having me, Amy. And yeah, so you had a very complicated and long question, but I tried to answer it. Yes, I was born here in the winter wonderland called Finland, and I'm a Christian, a third generation Pentecostal Christian, and about 20 years ago, God made an intervention into my life, and suddenly He helped me to see Israel and the Jewish people from the pages of the Bible in a very new way, and that was the beginning of my journey related to Israel and the Jewish people. And during these 20 years, I started reading the scriptures. The first 2-3 years, I almost only I read the scriptures, and I wanted to know, even though I thought that I knew the Bible, but I started to read it from a very new perspective, and I wanted to know everything it tells about God's purpose and plan for the Jewish people and Israel. And the top of this biblical phase, I wanted to know about the history, the Jewish history. How does it match with the biblical text? And to my huge surprise, actually, I found it very. They were shaking hands, and when the Jewish history came into 1850, 1860, I think it changed into a political history. And these three layers have been very active in my life since 2005, when this intervention took place. And what else did you ask?
So, as you made that discovery, what the pages of scripture revealed to you about the Jewish people, Israel, God's purpose, his plan for them, and you started to look at that compared or aligning with the historical or more recent, say, the last 150 years, 200 years of history that the Jewish people have experienced. What did you discover about Christians or the nations or the world as you saw how the Jewish community and the birth of Israel was manifesting?
Mm. Yeah, many findings, really many findings, but related to the church. I mean, the universal church.
Mm.
Uh, my finding was very, I would say, I didn't look for a finding what I found, and the history of the church and the relationship between the church and the Jews is really tragic, and especially from the church side. And it was really painful to understand. Apostle Paul is talking about that. You know, Christians are grafted in to the original tree. But I thought that's the church and church leaders and popes and bishops have done everything to cut off the branches of that Jewish tree. And I've been lecturing for quite many years, uh, a lecture titled "The Holocaust in the Midst of the Christian Europe." And I'm explaining what has happened throughout these not only centuries but almost 2,000 years.
Mhm.
Actually, this kind of allergy towards the Jewish people, the church's allergy, it started in 325 AD when the Nicene, the popes and bishops gathered in Nicaea, and they wanted to get rid of the Jewish roots of the church, and they did it well, unfortunately, and ever since, church the church has had uh, really bad thoughts and plans towards the Jewish people, and I'm really ashamed about it as a Christian.
Oh, I agree with you, and I feel the same way. And I love your analogy that the original tree, the Christians in Europe, the leadership anyway, for power or hate or a combination, tried to replace that tree with the
Mm,
church. And we have the term replacement theology to sort of illustrate that. But you make a great point. We turned the grafting into a replacement. Now
mm.
that
Let me comment this
Sure.
idea of the replacement theology.
Mm,
So um, many church leaders are saying that the church has replaced the Jewish people in God's plan because the Jewish people turned away and walked away from God, and they did all kinds of things that didn't please God. And the Bible really tells about that it was God became angry. And that's kind of a sad part of the story that they were God God wasn't pleased with the Jewish people. But if you look at the church today, again, I'm talking about the universal church,
right.
and especially the Western church in Europe and in the United States. Do you think that God is pleased with the church today? And if he's not, my question, based on the logic of the replacement theology, who's going to replace the church?
Exactly. That's a great point.
And when you end up into this question, you understand that the whole idea of the replacement theology is stupid
Yeah.
and totally unbiblical.
Yeah, yeah, and it claims that when God said he makes a promise, when he makes a promise to anyone, whether it's Abraham, his descendants, or
Mm,
the Christians in the first century when Jesus was talking to them before and after his resurrection, it also tells everybody that God can change his mind, God can then get
mm,
angry and revoke his promises, and
mm,
negate what he said, and none of us can rest assured on his promises because they're based on what we do and our behavior, and
right.
and that's then that negates the whole thing. So
Mm.
that is
Yeah.
a great point. Thank you for addressing that. So in in a post-Christian Europe and post-Christian America too, or the West that's becoming increasingly secular and disregarding the church and its teachings,
Mm.
that level of animosity towards the Jewish people now manifesting against Israel because a state exists. How do you see those sort of sociological ideas continuing? So the world is rejecting the church largely, and not individuals are not embracing church, and yet they keep those same ideas that the universal church had been preaching. And what are your thoughts on that? How that creeps in even outside the church?
Mm. Um, about 10 years ago, I was discussing the decline of the church with a dear friend, and we were kind of suggesting reasons why the church doesn't do well today, and we suggested different ideas and reasons, and suddenly um, I I said to my friend, and just a second, I need to take my Bible as,
Okay.
as reference.
That's always
Yeah,
a handy thing to refer
I'm
to.
back here. No worries.
Yep.
And at that time, I didn't realize and I didn't recall or remember the exact um, uh, verse from the scriptures that I was referring to, but it was clear enough um, for me to understand what I said to my friend. And when I came back home, I found it in Psalm 137, and from the verse 5, it says the following: "If I forget you, O Jerusalem, may my right hand forget its skill. May my tongue cling to the roof of my mouth if I do not remember you, if I do not consider Jerusalem my highest joy." And it was kind of a revelation
Hmm.
for me, and as well to my friend. And ever since, I've been so convinced when I look at the churches in general. I see the churches who are blessing Israel and they are prospering. When I look at the ministries who are blessing Israel, again they are doing great. And when I look at the old institutional churches like the Lutheran Church, Catholic Church, who even they may hate Israel, and their membership is declining, and you have problems to find uh, believers in the church, and they have really just like this Psalm 137 says, the other hand has lost its power. And when your tongue, and if your tongue clings to the roof of your mouth, nobody understands your message. And my understanding is that bringing Israel back to the altar and to the core message of the church. Just recently, I was in the United States, and we were talking about preaching the gospel and how Israel fits into that concept. I said that I have found a powerful tool in my personal testimony, uh, bringing the case of Israel and the scriptures related to Israel to my personal testimony. And I said folks, if Jesus doesn't work, try Israel as a kind of a icebreaker to bring the reliability of the scriptures to your unbelieving friend or person you are meeting with.
Well, that is beautiful, because if someone says it, give me proof or explain why you think the Bible's real or reliable, as you put it, yeah, that the story of Israel is a, a demonstration of what
The
God's.
only I would say that Israel is the only concrete demonstration of the reliability of the Bible. Everything else is about faith.
Mhm.
And
Trusting
you
the
say
unseen.
I say that I believe in Father, Son, and the Holy Spirit. Fine, it's good for you. But if you bring Israel to the discussion, it's something that you can find in your school books, in your maps, in your evening news, everywhere. And everything that's happening there has been written thousands of years ago
That's
in
right.
the Bible.
Yeah, and the endurance that God will keep a remnant, and that endurance will be there for his glory and his sake. So as you that's a beautiful way to relate to people, and sh share your faith, and also share the legitimacy of, politically speaking, about Israel today. So
Mm.
how do you feel? Give us a little perspective of what's going on in Europe, in Scandinavia, or in Finland specifically, about that relationship between the culture and the society, and either the Jewish population, what there is of it in Scandinavia, and that international issues, as it relates to policy or outlook about Israel and its ongoing struggles now, which are not isolated to post October 7. Certainly, Israel has been in the crosshairs of um,
Mm.
of hate since its inception, surely. But what are your thoughts or your reflections on that atmosphere
Mm.
today?
So the Jews are guilty for everything and about everything that's happening in the Middle East. So that's the
Perspective.
my perception. Um, I'm one of the initiators of the um, parliamentary group against anti-Semitism in the Finnish parliament. And
Wonderful.
actually, it was founded by that very friend with whom I discussed the Psalm 137.
Wow.
My late friend, who was a great friend and great member of parliament. And so we wanted to initiate um, an organ within the parliament. For years we've been lobbying the members of parliament and help them understand what's going on related to the Jews in Finland, Jews in Europe, and in Israel and the Middle East, and so the anti-Semitism is so illogical
Mhm.
uh, phenomenon that you cannot explain it. Uh, it's there are no reasons. So we don't hate Russians here in Finland or in Europe because Putin wanted to invade Ukraine. We don't hate Chinese for the crimes their government is doing. And even though Israel is not committing any crimes but defending
Mhm.
against a terror organization and enemies from the seven fronts, so blaming Jews about this everything that takes place in and around Israel is again stupid.
Yeah. Illogical, to say the least. And
Yeah,
and
yeah.
how is your messaging? I mean, and you mentioned your group in Parliament, which is so important, but you also have the Finland Israel Association. Is that correct? And is there other avenues that are coalescing like-minded Christians and any people from other faith and Jews and what
Mm,
just
yeah,
the greater population that are coalescing to work sort of to champion that truth and counter that illogical, stupid approach that it seems to be global.
yeah, yeah. 7 years ago, I was appointed or elected uh, chair of the Federation of Finland Israel Associations. It's we just in December we had our 70th anniversary, and so it's a secular organization, not a Christian organization, but most of our members and also board members are Bible believing Christians. But we also have in our board we have uh, I think five or six Jewish friends. So it's kind of a we are working together very closely together with the Jewish community here in Finland,
That's great.
and it's about explaining and defending Israel and what's going on there, and it's about writing to media, asking for corrections on their articles, and it's hard work, but somebody needs to do it.
Oh, it,
Additionally, I'm vice chair of the Finnish Holocaust Remembrance Association, which annually we organize the January 27th, the International Holocaust Remembrance Day event together with the government of Finland, and that's one of my three hats.
Well, it sounds like your organization that is doing the constant and never-ending stream of media corrections requests it has a
Mm,
team that is closely kindred to our team at Camera, that's for
mm,
sure. So I'm glad to know that that important work is going on
mm.
in the Finnish media news cycles. And do you often speak? I know you spoke at a church in Arizona back in March, but how often are you speaking to exclusively Christian communities or in church settings? How often is that occurring, and how is your message received?
Um, I do speak in churches, of course, mainly in Finland, uh, 2, 3 times a month,
Wonderful.
and and also recently I've been honored to speak in several churches in the United States within past few months, and additionally, and my main media is my TV show, weekly TV show Israel Studio, uh, a Finnish program every Saturday at 8 p.m.
That's excellent.
And that's again, it's not religious, it's not Christian, but
Right.
it's something, a channel that we want to educate our viewers about the political developments, about the crisis, about the military developments in and around Israel. And my guests are members of parliament, scholars, and community leaders, and etc.
Well, that's wonderful. And yes, yeah, while we have to garner the support and educate the Christian community, absolutely. I think that the work that you do with your television program that is just designed to educate the entire public, regardless of their religious affiliation or
Mm,
religion
mm,
or walk with anything. But I think it's wonderful that that outlet's on in Finland and that work is so vital, and we appreciate that we can know that activity is going on in Finland. So I thank you for all that hard work, and if I understood Finnish, I would try to find your program and watch it. But in the meantime, we'll pray for its wide dissemination and increased viewership so that your
mm,
messages are relayed accurately, and as well as the work with your other organizations inside Finland. And it's important to our viewers to know that Risto's expertise also dives deep into American history. You have a book called it's The Miracle of Israel, and I don't, if you can tell us the exact title where we can look for it, but it involves your deep dive into oh, there he is, The Miracle of Israel and President Truman. I encourage everybody to research this book or some pamphlets that I think you've published that have a condensed version, because if you want to learn about the miracle so that you can convey it in your own testimony, this Finnish gentleman knows more about the American history and leadership issues in that period of time in the 30s, under Roosevelt and Truman, and then with Truman in the State Department, and all the nuances, that the battles that were political that ultimately were spiritual battles that won the
Mm.
day. It's a valuable resource, and it can just really be a great tool for any American to understand our own history and our relationship with Israel. And it could also fortify your faith and your ability to share it. And your
Yeah, actually, uh, the book is at the moment not available in the United States, and
okay.
I'm looking for a distributor and a partner to make it. And I also there are some talks that within next few months, after the summer, I would come to the United States, and I will have some speeches and lectures about Truman in churches and probably also in some synagogues. And I would be happy to uh, visit also other churches and synagogues and open for any kind of invitations.
Well, that would be wonderful. As you get your schedule solidified, please keep us posted, because we will relay that information on our channels, our social media, not only to let people know where you're already booked, but to encourage folks to contact you, to invite you for an engagement, because I do think it's important. And I know the distribution of your book is something you're in process with, but if folks find you in person at an event, you probably you may be keeping a few copies where you can sell them and distribute them that way.
Of course, yeah,
Um,
yeah.
but it is very valuable. I have not read it yet, to be honest, but I've heard you speak
Mm,
about it on several interviews. So I really think it's a very unique thing for me to see as an American, somebody from Europe, somebody from Finland, dive so deep into our history and know more about it and be able to educate us on our history, which is
yeah, it's been funny to know or to understand. Everybody, I would say, all friends of Israel knew that Harry Truman was the president who recognized the state of Israel immediately after it was declared. But the way how Harry Truman ended up in the Oval Office, it's so unknown, and it's a wonderful story about the power of the Bible
that's
and
right.
power of the prayer. And Harry Truman was a believer. He believed in the scriptures, and when he found himself in the Oval Office, uh, actually April 12th, 1945, exactly 80 years ago. So he understood
Right.
that it was his momentum to help the Jewish people return to their ancient homeland after the Holocaust.
I mean, that's what Americans need to know. Most people, like you said, you learn it in school that May 1948, the New York Times newspaper splashed out there, Israel
Mm,
declares independence. Truman is the first head of state, and that started a domino effect. But that was a battle that he fought for a while. It was
mm,
a path
yeah.
that was perilous, to say the least. And it's a beautiful story about how God does rise up and dethrone
Mm,
kings and leaders, and we can again use it as another concrete manifestation of, well, why do you believe the Bible? Well, here's was a
Yeah,
is
so
a
so true.
nation
Yeah.
born in a day. Well, yeah, it was. Not without
Mm,
some efforts before it. But Risto,
mm,
I really appreciate just your mind and everything you're able to process and convey, and how you make that your life's work to share that with the broader community, not just the Christian community, and that your heart is there to love Israel and support the Jewish people, the apple of God's eye. And I just see you as a man
mm.
that you love what God loves, and you love his word and his path. So thank you so much for joining us. We would love to follow up with you as you get your schedule organized for another visit to the States. And we'd love to be able to share with our viewers where you might be, or have you visit
Mm.
them as they might be able to host an event.
Yeah, thank you, Amy. It was wonderful to talk to you, and I look forward to meeting you again.
Yes, thank you so much. Shabbat
Thanks.
Tov.